Welcome, everybody, especially Brigitte is here to talk about wine tourism. We'll start the conference, and at 3:30, we'll stop the conference and we'll pass to a roundtable format. Okay? Please answer, listen, and make questions. Take notes, ask questions.
Okay, hello everybody, and hello to everybody online. I'm very pleased to be here to speak about the future of wine tourism. In reality, I will speak about the future, but I will also try to understand what is going on now and how the activity is changing. First, to start, I will introduce myself. I am working in wine tourism since over 20 years. I was in charge of the regional committee of tourism of the region Aquitaine before it became Nouvelle-Aquitaine. And I'm involved in wine tourism at the national level in France since also a very long time. I'm getting old, it's a pity, but it's a reality. So I am a member of the Conseil supérieur de Monitorism, National Wine Council, and also the working group about wine tourism by Atout France. I don't know if you know, maybe you know much better than a lot of people, because Atout France is in charge, the French agency in charge of tourism. I am vice president of the group working on wine tourism by Atout France. And I will speak today in the name of Atout France because the idea was to give you input about the situation at the national level, not especially about the local, even if later on in the roundtable we will have a lot of occasion to speak about the local situation with my friends and partner sitting already here. So Atout France developed 20 years ago, even maybe a little bit more, a group on wine tourism. It was quite unusual at that time because wine tourism was already existing, but still at the starting point or at a development point. And the idea in this working group at that time was to put together people from the wine and people from tourism. It seems an evidence today because, of course, if you want to do wine tourism, you need the people from wine industry and for tourism to sit together, but it was not the case before. Even if already in the end of the 80s, there was a house of wine and tourism in Pauillac, which was the first one existing and opened already Sundays, which was in Bordeaux. I think the only example in all the vineyard. When we started at the national level to make this working group about wine tourism, it was really something new to put the people from the wine and tourism together. And it was really a learning process to understand each other because when I speak about wine tourism, I really speak about tourism in wineries, in the vineyard. I don't speak about wine and how to sell wine and maybe a little bit about tourism. I really speak about tourism. And that was often sometimes a misunderstanding between people from the wineries and people from tourism to really understand what it means if you look at it from the touristic point of view or if you look at it to the wine point of view, which is not always the same. So we succeeded to develop this group and we grow together. What do we do? There are four types of activities that we do. Encourage demand through collective marketing campaigns, today centered around digital and influencers, as well as in international prescribers. At the beginning, we have done campaigns through press articles. It was also a big advertising campaign, and we follow the evolution of the media using today a lot digital work. It was good because we succeeded, even if the amount of money France dedicated to promote wine tourism. It's been always very small. And the maximum budget we had for wine tourism was €500,000, which is at the national level nearly nothing. But we really use it to work together. And so we made a campaign with people from Bordeaux financing, Alsace, all over France. So it was good to succeed to put our wishes together to make an international campaign. Because with Atout France, up to the crisis, we only worked on the international markets, never on the French market. Improve the overall quality of wine tourism in France. Of course, at the beginning, I will tell you a story, but when I started, as I told you, more than 20 years ago, there were wineries open to the visit where you couldn't park your car and you didn't have clean glasses to drink, and even not a room to make your degustation, your tasting. So it was at that time, when the idea was to improve wine tourism, it was also to start by good welcoming conditions for visitors. And it was very important at that time, the investment that the region, but other partner has done to help wineries to improve the quality of the offer. Today, when we say improve quality of the offer, it's very different because we are already in a much better situation. And we decided to create, it's nearly 10 years ago, Vignoble et Découverte. It's a French label at the national level. You have wineries, but also restaurants, hotels, guest houses, shops that can be, and also big activities like the Bordeaux Wine Festival that can be labeled Vignoble et Découverte. It's a label that is given to a territory. And it was at the beginning the same idea, for people from the wine and people from the tourism at the local level to work together and to decide together how to promote the area. And it was very good because in Bordeaux, we already had worked together and had a local label, but in some other places in France, they didn't have anything. So it was a good start for them to sit together and to think how to develop wine tourism in that territory. So it was very improving. And now I think we are having 71 territories having this label and more than 4,000 activities, wineries, shops and restaurants labeled all over France. Monitor, observe and build intelligence on the wine tourism sector to encourage initiatives and investment. That will be a key issue of my presentation because I will have the occasion to tell you about the numbers and facts about wine tourism, and I will make I will compare different countries. But in reality, I will compare a carrot to a potato because nobody is counting the same way. So we try to compare ourselves to the rest of the world, but it's always difficult because there is no understanding about how to count the number of tourists and how to count what is really a tourist and what is not a tourist. I will give you my definition, but it's a French definition. It doesn't mean that the numbers I will show you after will be on the same basis. But the comparison is still useful because it gives you an idea about its developing. And we try, even on the national level, when we say we try to monitor and observe, it's very difficult, even in France. We restarted this year to try to find out how many wineries and facilities are open to visit. Everybody thinks we know it already, but in reality, we don't know it really. So it was already a big work just to make it, just to know better in each region what is open for visit or what is not open for visit. We made a little bit more than 10 years ago, it was 2009, a very big study about wine tourism. And we didn't get, again, the same amount of money to succeed to make a second one. So most of the figures we are still using to know what is wine tourism for France is dating 10 years ago. And we know how it's, we made a short study to see the evolution, but the big study we have done 10 years ago, France was not able to renew it later on. And it's still a good question. We have to find out how we will be able to follow the evolution of wine tourism. But we try to do our best. And now we are working on a very interesting study that we will have the results, I think, in October, next October. It's about the economical model of wine tourism. We try to understand how you can say what is the success of wine tourism. For some people, it will be the image. For some it will be the amount of wine they sell, and others can have a different goals. So it's a very interesting study that we will have on the national level. We are also having training programs and contents to professionalize wine tourism in France. Even if I compare 20 years ago and today, there are a lot of very interesting university degrees or a lot of diplomas that are developed now in wine tourism, but it was not the case 20 years ago. Speaking with a mask a long time, it's not so easy. So, how was the situation before COVID? We were in a very good mood for global rise in wine tourism. In France, as I told you, the numbers are dating a little bit, even if it's not the 2009 study, because we made another one 2017, so it was 2 years before COVID. We are having 10 million wine tourists in France per year. It's increasing every year since 2010, 4%. In revenue, 5.2 billion euros, and a strong proportion of foreign tourists, 48%, many Europeans, but also from the States. More than 11,000 wineries opened for visit in 2020, 10% more than 2010, and a huge potential for progress. Keep in mind this 48% of foreign tourists, because we will be surprised if we look to the results in the other countries. It's because I speak about tourists, my definition of tourists, and I will come back, not mine, but the French definition of tourism. What is for the French use a tourist? It's a person having spent at least one night in France for leisure holidays, outside of their usual environment, and having visited one or several facilities around wine and its production, tasting, wine cellars, museum, vineyards, wine routes, wine villages. It means people that don't sleep at home, they are considered as tourists. Because if I include the number of visitors not being tourists, I'll give you an example. If I go one day to a winery, in a restaurant, to another winery, and go back home, I am not counted in that part. Because if we count that, of course, the number of foreigners will be smaller compared to the numbers of French people. Here we speak about tourists as a whole. It means all the people that spend a night outside to go for wine tourism. In that part, the number of foreigners is 48%. In Bordeaux, it's the same situation. We have a much higher level of foreign tourists in wine tourism than in the rest of tourism. It means that wine is an important factor for foreign visitors to visit France. It's belonging to, I said always, in our region, we have our Eiffel Tower is wine in Bordeaux. It's really when a foreign visitor, even the Europeans, but the one coming from far away, when they come to France, they want to have a visit in a winery because it belongs to the French culture. It's really seen as something very essential as a French culture, which is true. In the first studies, we also try to understand the proportions of the different type of tourists we are having in wine tourism. I keep it in this presentation because this is still very interesting to see differences between visitors. The so-called Epicureans, which is the biggest part, are mostly interesting in going to a winery, taste, enjoy, visit cellars. That's the bigger part of the people. And if you ask someone, I was very surprised the first study in 2009 when the question was put about what is your first reason to come? We always think very complex things, but in reality, the people, they come to taste and drink and taste and enjoy. That's the first wish when they visit a winery. The traditionalists, 24%, see wine as a part of discovering of the culture and the heritage of a destination. The experts, they want to know how we make the wine, what is the history of the terroir, as well as the wine world, and the explorers are those who want to know some secrets, to know a little bit more, and to see what the rest of the people don't see. At that time, and today, wine tourism is consistent with the consumer demand. Trends are the vivre, the quest for meaning, exchanges, and experience. That's very nice with wine tourism because it's something you always have to experience. If you don't experience, you don't do wine tourism. So it's very fitting to the wish of the tourists today. Still before COVID, our analysis was that we wanted to develop more activities for young people, young people, families, because it's always a question. I have a family. The parents want to taste wine. What to do with the children? So it was a big evolution, and still in the evolution today that we need products done for family, where the children can do something when the parents do something else. High-end consumers, business and MICE also. And I kept also the typical wine tourist in France to give an idea about the profile of the people visiting a winery. A man, 47 years old, having good income, a regular wine drinker, preferred driving by car. This is something very important in wine tourism, and that was also to be seen during the crisis. As far as the people drive, they buy wine. It's easier if you have your car. It's always the difficulty we have with foreigner visitors is that they need a way to send wine home because they cannot keep it if they are flying. It's more difficult. So a lot of people visiting the wineries, they go by car and they can put the wine in the car. Again, to give an idea about what brings also wine tourism to the economy, the average spent per wine tourism stay was, when we had done this study before the crisis, 1,256 euros and an average of 240 euro of wine buying during the stay. But as I said before, when in the study we are doing today to understand what is the purpose of wine tourism, you can also have mid and long-term fallouts like construction of a brand image, raise awareness, and also conservation of a culture and heritage and local savoir-faire. How was the situation in the world before the crisis? When you look at this and at this slide, it's interesting to see that all over Europe you can do wine tourism, even if in countries which are big producer but not so in our minds for wine tourism as Germany, as an example. it's the first on the left. I will go from the left to the right. Germany is having an average of 7.2 million visitors per year, including 89% of nationals. And this is what I told you before. To take with it gives you an idea, but the number itself is difficult to compare from one country to the other country, because I'm sure if we would introduce our visitors, French visitors, it would be also similar, but the bigger number are nationals everywhere. In Portugal, 2.2 million visitors have a wine tourism experience every year, with 10% of international visitors expecting to enjoy a wine tourism or gastronomic experience. Spain, 3 million wine tourists visited the wine routes of Spain every year before COVID, and 25% foreign tourists. In Italy, 170 wine routes. You know, the concept of a wine route is always like you have as many definitions as many countries you have, because some are really counting a route, others it's a region. So if you see that Italy is having 170, it means the routes are small. And 14 million visitors every year, for an estimated revenue of 2.5 to 3. No, it's not billion. It's million, I think. Billion euros. If you look to the so-called New World, which is less new than before, in the United States, more than 13 million wine tourists per year, more than half in California alone, and 4.4% wine tourists per year since 2016 increase. It's increased. In Napa, and an increase of 50% in revenue. But if you compare the wine tourism, in my opinion, the experience in all these countries are very different. If you look to Napa Valley is one road with wineries on both sides. If you look to wine tourism in Italy or wine tourism in France, it's villages, it's small street, so you can absolutely not compare how easy or difficult it is to reach a winery, because the culture and the way it's organized is totally different. But I was also very surprised. I was 2 times in Napa. Napa was given 10 years ago as an example, which is quite true. It's very well organized. But the bigger part of visitors in Napa Valley are living around. It's not that everybody around the world is coming to Napa Valley just to visit the wineries. Argentina, with an increase of 23% of wineries open to visit between 2013 and 2018. And an increase of 17% of visitors during the same period. 1.7 million visitors on local wine routes in 2018. In Australia, 8.4 million visitors for Australian wineries. New Zealand, 1 international tourist out of 4 visited a winery in 2017. And China, even China is developing a wine tourism. We didn't have the crisis. I think we have had a lot of more Chinese wine on our tables that we are having today. So what we can conclude about these 2 slides about wine tourism is that it's existing all over the world, and it's having this idea of everywhere of sharing an experience, looking how things are done, but the way you do wine tourism is very different from one country to the other. That was a map we created in Atout France. It gives the idea about the numbers of visitors if you compare to the countries, and you see that even if France is a small country, numbers of visitors is quite high. And for some studies estimated that wine tourism generate 50 million wine tourists and 22 trillion? Billion. I think it's a billion because j'ai déjà corrigé 2 fois, mais still some mistakes in revenue per year. Just to come back to what I said about what is being a wine tourist in different countries. In France, even things are changing and we will see how they change. But I would say in France, a tradition is when you go to a winery, if you want to taste wine, but you want to know how wine is produced, and you go through the facilities and then go at the end and have a wine tasting, even if there are a lot of other offers. But in France, a lot of people, when they visit a winery, they accept to know how the wine is done. Well, I remember the first time I was, I think, in Australia. You can arrive in the cellar door, you test the wine, and nothing else. You can sit very nicely, have a beautiful view. And if you ask, I would like to know, I would like to visit, are you sure? It looks like it's very strange if you're asking for more, and especially if you ask for visiting facilities. But I also remember the first time I was in Napa Valley and Sonoma Valley, I was also very surprised to see the number of tanks and the size of the tanks, because when arriving from Bordeaux, even if there are big wineries in Bordeaux, it's totally different, because we will never expose in the middle outside these big tanks. So it's quite a different experience. And also in France, when you are arriving to a winery, it's at the origin, there were farmers. It's the idea to be in a place where the people cultivated the land. It's not an industry. So the houses are old, even if they are modernized, but it's being in a tradition. And the first time I was in the Napa Valley, I was very surprised, because everything is constructed, including visitors, of course, because it's recent. So the relations to the visitors is totally different, but it comes not only because of a wish, it's also because of a tradition, it's because of an history, because of a way of production, which are totally different. So coming to the impact of COVID-19 on wine tourism, of course, it had a very strong and negative impact globally. Because we first stopped everything at the beginning. We put in the middle of this slide the restriction, the travel restriction. When no one was traveling, of course, it was very, it had a very direct influence on wine tourism. Most winery activities impacted were stopped, and direct and hospitality sales collapsed. So the impact at the beginning, it was a very strong and negative impact. The Swedish company Winetourism.com conducted a comprehensive study on the impact of COVID-19 on international wine tourism, and more than 1,200 wineries located in 34 countries responded. And 53% of international wineries declared a loss of 50% or more of revenue. And a majority of international wineries do not accept a return to normal before at least the end of the current year. That was the study done after the first lockdown that we had at the beginning of COVID. But very rapidly, we had a glimmer of hope, because we use the word of resilience in French, but the people adapted very rapidly and tried to find solution. And also because in reality, when we reopen a little bit, the idea to go to a winery was, when you live in a city, it was the occasion to go outside. So it was rapidly seen in the wineries, as an example, in our region, that they had less visitors, but they sold more wine to the visitors coming, because first the people came by car, they had time to enjoy, and then pleasure to buy some wine, also because they had done less expenses by traveling, so they had more money to buy wine. And on the distribution side, and despite strong variation amongst operators, some companies such as Rue des Vignerons, I don't know if you know Rue des Vignerons. It's a website where you can book your visits. It's very easy. You can choose the region where you want to go and which kind of visit you want to do, and you book your visit. And they had a greater volume of business than pre-COVID-19 level. So it was, for some of the people, the first summer after the beginning of the crisis, not so bad as we were thinking at the beginning. And also the impact of COVID is the ideas that change is possible, and adaptation is possible. And also because things were already moving before COVID. You know, we are living in tourism, and I know that you had conferences this morning about how tourism is changing. I think a lot of things were somehow starting already before COVID, and COVID gave the opportunity to go more rapidly to some evolution that we are already in motion before. And some people think we can come back to the factor number we had before, but I think we will never come back the same way. Of course, tourists will come back. We have seen in the tour last year, as soon as if it's possible to travel, the people travel because they want to see something else, they want to relax, they want to change atmosphere, they want to discover something, but they do it certainly on a different way. And there were studies about the transformation, and I think what was already existing but will stay after this crisis is these 5 items, I would say. Local, of course, because if some people will again travel all around the world, we rediscovered that there are a lot of things to see and to do near. And some nice experiences are to be done or can be done not so far away. So I think it was one of the things we learned through COVID. Safety, of course, because after what we have seen, it will remain, I think, a long time that we will take care of the consequence on the health of what we do. Digital, and we will come back to what wine tourism has done, has developed during the last 2 years. Entertaining, because I think it's also a big evolution, and especially for the French people, it's a challenge because we were more used to, I would say, traditional visits, or very with a lot of content, with a lot of information, as I told you before, about how wine is done. But there is also a wish to more, I would say, entertaining visits today. And of course, the question of sustainable, which has become a real subject since we started this crisis. First, if we go to the future of wine tourism, to the local subjects, domestic tourism will continue to be the main driving force in the future. Also because I think what we try to explain to wine producer they could feel it during the crisis. Since the beginning of wine tourism, we try, as the Americans do it very well, we're trying to explain the French wine producer that they can develop special relations with the customers that are living near. You don't work with your customers in around 1 hour around your winery in the same way as you work with customer living in the other side of the world. And in France, we were not really, and also not in Bordeaux, having a special relations to our customers living around. So like in the States, where you have these wine clubs, you can subscribe in a program, you are invited in a special evening, your wine can rest in the winery, and you can come with friends and enjoy your own wine, your own bottles in the winery. There are a lot of things you can do if you consider that your local customers are special customers. And I think this is something that they started to understand, not only theoretically as it was before, but they had to see it in the reality. And it was something very that we can notice this summer, that a lot of wineries have done some ganguettes, some restaurants outside, or some, because they understand that they have to propose things for people around and not only thinking about the customers being at the other side of the world. So this idea will certainly continue. And also the idea of activism through tourism. It means if you buy something local, then you help a local production, you help maybe people that cannot make it without you. And it's something like being engaged to support local economy. All these concepts were strongly developed during COVID. Then the safety, the big influence of the question of safety is how the people book their holidays. They book it last time. They need to be able to change, not to do it. If the producer are not having this flexibility, they will not make it, because today people are really expecting to have this flexibility, because we learned that the condition of visit can change from one day to the other. Look, the last evolution we are having. The 2nd of February, we will have some changes, and the 16th of February, then we thought this summer that it was the end of the 3rd wave, and then came the 4th and the 5th. So if we are not flexible and able to adapt, it will not work. So this question of last minute, it's difficult for produce, difficult for hotels, it's difficult for everybody, but it's the way it's working now. The question of the safety is the way you try also to reassure your customers. And if you look to wine tourism, at the beginning we didn't know. At the beginning we didn't know what to do. Can we still serve wine? How can the people, if they don't want to drink, what do they do? How can they do if there are a lot of other people? Is it safe to share? Is it not safe? So at the national level, we made a work to try to define what are the expectations, because it was also the condition to reopen that we have frame how to organize wine visits during COVID. I think we succeeded quite well, because First, when you are in a winery, you don't need to be inside all the time. So it was very nice to also organize the wine tasting outside, to find solution to be outside, because we know that being outside is important if we want to fight against COVID. Of course, small groups, because you remember there was a number of the size of the group that could be accepted or not. Individual spirituals can easily be used for tasting. So we found solution, and we were able also to explain to the customer, don't be afraid, if you come, we will follow these rules. The reason why, yes, the mask should also be
Watching.
Digital, this is also very important. We discover the opportunity to make this wine tasting online. It's a little bit strange at the beginning when you think, okay, I will do a wine tasting online. How can I do that? Of course, if you don't have wine to taste, you don't make a wine tasting online. But if you're able to send, and it was working because a lot of people have tested it, to sell some wine, to send some wine, then to organize a wine tasting. And I think that it was very pleasant to make it, because I took part. I'm sure some of you, maybe not a lot, but some of you had tested it. It's quite nice, because you have a feeling of not being alone, even if you are alone in front of your computer, and there are people explaining. So it's really you can imagine a relation. And I think that for some people, it was like discovering that things are possible to be done online, because we were thinking, okay, through the fact that it's wine tasting, we will never be able to use the online channels, but the COVID was an expression that it's possible to do. And some sent small quantity, others proposed to sell 3 or 6 bottles and then to explain the bottle. So there were a lot of ideas coming from different wineries to use online tasting. We had also virtual wine tours in wineries. It's nice. In my opinion, it's a little bit more difficult because, okay, if you have the wine to taste, then you have some things where you are part of. If you are not being able to visit yourself, it's not the same if you visit with your computer. But it was also an idea not to stop the contact with the consumer, because I think it was also the idea with these visits, virtual visits, to stay in contact, never to stop the contacts. Just to make a little, I'm also in charge of organizing, not alone organizing the wine festival in Bordeaux, and we were having this thinking. Do we wait 1 year more without doing anything, or do we try to find a solution? And we tried last year to find a solution while making the wine tasting in the restaurant and in the different wine shops. We tried to make it because we wanted not to lose the contact with the consumer and not to lose the influence of the brand. And so I think it's important, and it's the reason why a lot of wineries try to maintain the contact with these wine tours, online wine tours. Will it stay after COVID? Certainly not in the same way, but this idea to share a visit, or to share something, to share images, or to share a moment together, I think it will also continue after COVID. And we see, I think at the beginning, nobody was thinking it would be so long. So I think we will use it a long time. I spoke about entertaining. the idea of the difference of experience. And we are also experimenting in France, something that we didn't have before, is the idea to go to a winery just to have a drink. That would have never been our idea. Our idea would be to go to a winery, to learn something, to visit, and then to have a wine tasting. But the idea to go to a winery, to go to a restaurant, to have a drink, to just enjoy the place, I think it's something that is changing. And in the different experiences that are proposed today, this idea to do something in a moment, of course, with a connection to wine, but not only dedicating in learning about wine, is developing a lot. And there's also another way to enjoy wine on a more relaxed way. And you have here the example of Émile Codens, which is having 400,000 subscribers by TikTok, in the way he's showing the wine, a different way than the way we used before. So also wineries, or the relations to wine are adapted to the new generation, and it's very nice. And a question which is certainly a major shift in the consumer behavior is the question of sustainability. Catherine will certainly speak about it later on, because we introduced it already a long time ago, before it became as accurate as it is today in the best of the contest. Thank you. The contest we are making between wineries in our 11 wine capitals in the world. But anyway, the question the question is not how the wine is produced in the meaning first fermentation, second one, but how is it produced in the meaning how the wine is grown, which kind of products are used or not used, how the wines are adapting to the climate change, what is the relations from the production to the villages around, to the people around, to food, to really the idea to understand how the producer see his influence on the environment, the nature, and how this product wine can be again a production of the nature, even if it's existing through the help of human being. But this connection again between producing wine and being on the countryside, respecting the rhythm of the country, of the plants, of the nature, it's very important today. And I think it's also a change in the expectation of the visitors. As written on this slide, 83% of travelers thought sustainable travel was vital. We could have asked it 5 years ago. We will never have this kind of results. And 61% of travelers say the pandemic makes them want to travel more sustainably. And I think it's very important. We rethink all the touristic industry. You know, some years ago, before the pandemic, the idea was always to have more and more and more and more tourists. The only evaluation of tourism was the number: 80 million, 90 million, 100 million of foreign tourists in France. Nobody, or some of them, but it's now a minority, think that the way to see the efficiency of tourism is to count the number, a number to always more, but it's also a different relations to environment, to people, to towns, to regions, and this is very important. And if you look, when you ask the people what they are able to change, for them it's difficult to change the way they travel. It means if they fly, or if they go by car, or if they go by train, for them it's difficult to change that. But when they are somewhere, they like to to try to find they put aside their car and they go by public transportation or by bike or walk or try to use smooth déplacement mode. They they are ready to take care of comment on dit tout ce qui est déchets? Waste. Yeah, to take care of reduce the number of waste and also to sort out the different kind. And they are also very interested in local consumption, to try to find local products, not imported, and eat what the people eat or look what is produced. And it's the three things they are able to change rapidly. If you look to also evolution in the vineyard, this is an example from the region. It's called La Bulle Verte. It's you can, if you have your car, an electric car, of course, you arrive with your electric car. You can recharge your car, and during that time you get an electric bike, and you go biking in the wine and come back after wine tasting, discover things around. So it's another way of visiting, which is certainly part of the future of wine tourism. Sustainable, we have here the example of Caroline Cili. She is doing a lot of things, and last time she developed also wine and yoga, which is also developing a lot. And she was also making very interesting online testing. She was sending bottles, and people were buying bottles to make this tasting with her from in the distance. So it's also biodynamic wine testing, and Catherine could speak about in the category we are having. We see a lot of wineries that are now organizing visits to present the way they cultivated the earth and produced the wine differently as before. So it's really a big evolution. And also it's a question in the winery where it's not pointed out. The consumers or the visitors, when they come, they ask about, is your wine bio, what do you do? The question were not asked some years ago, but today they are really asked everywhere. Of course, it changed also in schools, in the way students are learning. Here it's an example of Master of Science, offering the chance to learn about sustainability, wine tourism, and gastronomy, close to the famous vineyards of Burgundy. So to resume all what I said, of course, a global growth of wine tourism before COVID, and we think that the wish to go to the winery will still remain. Strong impact of the pandemic on the industry across all markets. Despite the impact, industry players and visitors numbers during the summer allow for an optimistic forecast for the years to come. The pandemic has accelerated a number of deep transformations within the industry, and the immediate future of wine tourism will tend to focus on local safety, digital entertainment, and sustainability. That's it for my introduction. I am ready for questions or everything you would like to discuss.
Just something that it might be a kind of a interesting. Sciences Po in Lille is also offering a master's in drinking, eating, and living in France. They call it boire, manger, vivre. And yeah, it's a master. Yeah, and it's
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So maybe we could adapt something like that here.
Yeah, it could be an idea. But I think that really since 20 years, the number of educational programs with a connection to wine tourism are increasing a lot. And sometimes they developed also the relations between wine and food, but it is especially
This is
interesting.
culture,
Yeah.
and you know, just in general, like you know, how the food culture is part of society, and it's all about international relations, but definitely the wine is part of it, apparently. So
yeah, I think there's one thing missing that's related to what you just said. Local safety, digital entertainment, sustainability, education. Through our wine tours, we try to, in wine experience or workshop, we try to educate people. Talking about Napa Americans, Australians, they have no education when it comes to, food and wine. They know what they know, which is usually quite basics. And what they come to look for in those experiences are actually education about how you eat cheese, how you drink wine, how you serve this cheese and this wine. I mean, we educate people about sustainability. Sustainability is something that people ask you, what's organic wine? Well, there's so many cliches and stereotypes about what's organic, what's not. So I think education played a big role on what we do good in France. We say, the new world, just come, drink wine, and here we educate people. I think that's what people appreciate. We should play on where we're strong at, educating people.
But I think also all the visits that were developed when you do cheese and wine or chocolate and wine, it's always to explain how it works together and to explain a lot about taste, and it's very educational. I think there are a lot of programs that are developed or visits developed like these.
And those guys, you're talking about the influencer, his name, but they educate people about, they vulgarize, simplify wines by, just teaching what people want to understand, which is 95% of people about wine.
Right.
The last one.
Other questions or remarks?
I have one. It's like we know that everything is going to get digitized eventually in the future. Like, for example, by the data, we might have digital wine tools. It's already happening, but not like in a majority. It's a minority. But once it gets, once people start having this digitization effect on themselves, what about the exact essence of wine tourism, which you have right then and there? Like you're visiting a vineyard and you're seeing a vineyard right in front of your eyes, how it's getting harvested, how it's getting made, the manufacturing, even with the tasting, if you have it, the tour with the tasting. That's the exact essence of wine tourism. It's not the history we want. We already know most of the history. So isn't it the problem, like in future, like if everything gets digitized and everything is right in front of your screen, would it be a problem in tourism?
I think
like psychologically.
I absolutely agree with you, but I think things are not. It will not be one thing without the other one. I think it's one plus the other one, and the experience of being somewhere will never be replaced by looking a film to see. I was thinking of that. We had a discussion some days ago with someone about exhibitions, art exhibitions. Okay, why to go queue and see the real art if you can open your screen and see a very interesting professor telling you about all this picture? It's just a totally different experience, and I think this you will not change it. I think we will have both. We will have digital visits, But I was always thinking, you know, when for tourism, where you get this screen, you know, you put it and you are somewhere. Okay, you are somewhere, but you are still at the same place. So I was never thinking that it could replace a visit. But I think we have seen that, in my opinion, what could be the future is to, when you're traveling, you can travel far, but then longer and not so often. You don't need to go every two. You know, I was speaking with the pilot, and he said he was flying a plane to Barcelona. And usually you don't look at the people, but it was the evening, you have seen a young couple, and he was having one night there, and then the next morning he was flying back with the plane, and he saw the same people again. And he asked hôtesse de l'air, I don't remember the name in English, anyway, stewardess, to try to find out. The people, they were going to Barcelona for dinner. And this is, in my opinion, it's not a nice way. It's destroying the atmosphere because you fly one way and back. But if you go to a country, you spend 3 weeks discovering, visiting, or 2 weeks, and then go back, then you have the positive effects of traveling without destroying too much the environment. Because on the other side, tourism is a way to know the people, to understand better, and all what I need today about wine tourism was constructed because I traveled in a lot of foreign countries to understand how wine tourism is developed in other places, and exchanges are very rich. So I think this will be the reality, that we will take care of traveling differently. We will continue to travel, we will improve travel, because this experience you cannot share it on another way.
Unless it's a VR or AR, like unless it's a virtual reality or augmented reality, because they have those infrastructure in themselves.
But it will never be the same.
Yes.
So I don't know if the next generation, I don't mean you, but the next generation will be satisfied in always staying in the same place and just looking to screens. I hope not. But who knows? But I hope not. I think traveling was always a dream, to see something else, to share another experience. But certainly will be different, and I think we don't have the solution. Is traveling will become more expensive. So the people who had the opportunity to travel will have less opportunity to travel. So we have to think. I think the people in position to make decisions, they have to think about that. How to make it still possible for people with less money to continue traveling on another way. I think these are the challenges for tomorrow. But it will never be replaced by neutrality, or especially if you look to these activities, I think in all the fields of tourism, but especially if you look to a production, a local production you want to taste and see how the people do it, and it's better to go there to see it. So I think it will be always different.
And then another question, I saw a slide where you said that you want the wine tourism should be focused on MICE travelers. So how do you propose to, because they are not the ones you usually target for wine tourism?
Well, in reality, if you look to Bordeaux, it's a very important part of wine tourism, because it doesn't mean that the people come from the other part of the world for a seminar. It could be, but even in the short area, you are having a meeting, you want to make an activity together, then you go to a winery and make your own Bordeaux wine, your own Bordeaux blend, or you organize a seminar. You are an enterprise in Bordeaux, you want to organize a seminar in another field than sitting in your office, then you go to a winery. There are a lot of professional activities where you can go outside to winery. So it's very, the possibilities are very huge in reality, what you can do in a professional way. And it's always even easier for the wineries because they have a group and they can organize something special for the group. It's in reality, wine tourism, it's more difficult for individuals than for a group, because for a group, you can always organize in advance and arrange something special. For individuals, they have to find a place, a moment where something is organized.
Yeah, no, my feeling is I was actually just in the Finger Lakes wine area in December visiting. And I think tourism is something that it's about the experience. And I also think that there's people are looking for different types of experiences. Yes, you have somebody who comes and wants to hear more about the making of the wine, but you have other people who want to come for the experience of pairing it with something. You have other people who want to come and just drink. But I know, like, at least I know in New York State, I also know in California, you know, a lot of it is a lot of Americans just go to taste. And yet when I was talking to one winery, they're struggling with sort of the same thing, because they now having, I think it's a newer generation, they now have some people asking for the tour of the facility. They're asking for it. So they're, you know, struggling with the same thing from a different perspective of coming from just having a tasting room to how do we create experiences. And here, you know, in France, we've had the, you know, the visit and how we make the wine, and then let's taste it together. But then how do we create other experiences for what other people are looking at? But I think it's the variety. I think it's looking at your slide earlier where you talked about the different type of wine tours. I think it's looking at what are they looking for, and then having sort of a different things they can choose. And it could be also digital too, but you know,
and I think certainly that the future will be an adaptation, because we are used now to have something fitting to our wishes. So if you go to a winery, I always say that ask the people what they have seen already, what they have done already, and don't start again with all your visit without asking what the people have seen and what they want. And I think the wineries should have a range of visits, different type of visits that they can do, adapted to the wish of the clients. Because if you do to everybody the same things, it's never adapted. So it's a little bit of work at the beginning to produce the visits adapted, but I think it's really a real opportunity for feeling really what the people want. And I think it's very important to try to understand. And really, I think also the idea to have really to have special programs for local visitors is also very important.
And that's the experience is what people remember. So be it a local person, be it a foreign tourist, they go away with the experience. They don't necessarily remember all the facts, but they go away with the experience.
But if you want this experience as a producer, if you want the experience to serve your activity, then you have to follow. Then you have to take care again about these visitors. And usually we don't do that in Bordeaux. So it's we try to fight that the wineries really have different relations to the clients and feel it very as something important. You know, even 20 years ago, there were no direct relations between the people producing wine and the people consuming wine, because in Bordeaux, in between, we had the merchants. So in reality, the client was not the one drinking the wine, it was the one selling the wine. So the people, in the history of the Bordeaux wine, there were no connections with the direct consumer. And the big change of the last year is this direct relations, and they understand that even if they don't sell, even if they continue to sell through merchants, they need these relations. They need that a contact is established between a produced and the place it's produced, or the producer, or at least the idea about how it's produced. So it's very important, and it's still a work in progress in Bordeaux. Still,
I think it's a work in progress everywhere.
Yes, but it's also linked to the relation. I remember when I was in Napa Valley 20 years ago. Everywhere you arrive, you are this. Oh, it's wonderful! I'm so pleased to welcome you, and you are the best of the world. Do you want to be a member of my club? In Bordeaux, you know, at that time it was not exactly the same. Should be very pleased that I opened my door for you to visit. So it changes a lot. But, the position is not exactly the same everywhere.
I had a quick question, kind of in the same vein. because obviously, you know, Napa and has a great reputation for creating these events, and you come in and have a glass of wine. It's like you're sitting in your own sofa, you know, in your own home with a beautiful view. You know, we know that 80% of the people who visit wineries are well, in you know, live in urban areas, so they're looking for that, you know, connection with nature and go back to. And so Bordeaux, I think, is making strides toward, you know, the tapas and charcuterie with your wine. I mean, you know, they have some events, the wine and golf, wine and yoga. In France in general, do you think that other areas are doing the same thing? Are they accelerating those efforts to create these experiences more than Bordeaux, less than Bordeaux? How do you think
Well, I think in France it's a tendency everywhere to make this experience. We don't start from the same point, and I think all the wineries don't have the same resources to develop different products. So some are able to develop restaurants, others are not. So the different type of, I think nearly everybody understood now that they need to have an experience, something to do in the winery, which is not only tasting, can be tasting, but nice if you can pair it with something else. But the experience is different if you don't have the resource, if you have the resource, right kind of resource to have, and also if you can make it permanently, or if it's once a month that you do an activity, a special activity, or in special moments. It depends really from the place, from the also the importance. In Bordeaux, the wine is really very important in the economy, in everything. We are surrounded by wines and by wineries, and there are other regions where wine is part of the activity, but not so important as it is here. So I think there are different levels, but this tendency is everywhere. This trend is everywhere in the country, everywhere. And I think the idea that we are not so good as other countries, it's not a real one. We are developing a lot of things, and we are having a lot of opportunities, restaurants, hotels, and different kind of activities. It's just that the structure in France will remain villages, farmers, and that you will never change it. It means we will never have a street, a road with wineries on both sides. It will always be more difficult than in some countries where it's, you know, if you have a very big winery along the street, you can make a restaurant. It's different if you are in a corner in a small village. This difference will stay, and this is also what makes it nice, and also similar if you look to Italy. If you look Italy to France, I think we are having a type of wine tourism which is quite similar, I would say, in this part of Europe, South Europe.
Any other question?
So do we know how pleased are the French tourists?
Oh,
How pleased are the French tourists with the wine tourism?
I would say, you know, when you ask someone, when you ask someone, are you satisfied with your holidays? Mainly they say yes. It's only a very small part that say no, because you will never go home and say, oh, I spent a lot of money in my holidays, but it was a shit. Because when you come home, you want to explain, I had very wonderful vacation. So it's always a very small part. If you look to Bordeaux, the remark where the amount of satisfaction was the more in questions was the price quality relations. The idea that it's expensive, maybe more expensive, and we said in the past, but I think this is changing, that the quality of reception was not so good, that the people were not speaking foreign languages, but I think it's really changing, because there were a lot of efforts, educational efforts, through different kinds of schools and everywhere. So the level of reception in wineries, in my opinion, is now very good, and more and more in foreign languages. And I think this question is not so big. The idea of the price, It's strange because it's not strange, but in Bordeaux there are, I would say, maybe 200 very famous brands, very expensive brands, and a lot of, I would say, 3,000 rest of the brands that are on an acceptable price. Wine producer that produce wine on acceptable price. But the image of Bordeaux is connected with these 200 very famous and expensive brands, which is on one side positive because it makes it famous all over the world. On the other side, it makes it difficult because when I said that I know very good Bordeaux wines around 10 euros, people are looking like it could be impossible, and it's very, very easy. So this is a difficulty we are having, and also to speak frankly, the Bordeaux wines there were very marked by locally or nationally by a TV show we had saying that the Bordeaux wines are produced with a lot of chemicals, and it was really destroying a lot the image of Bordeaux wines. And in reality, the change is very big, and we are the first département in France for the surface in bio wines. And we are having more and more of the wineries that are certified, not bio, but certified in a process which is a very positive process called HVE. So I think this change and this movement is really strong, and we are fighting to make the people recognize this evolution of the Bordeaux wine and try to change this image on two sides, the price and the quality, in the sense of the decrease of use of chemicals and the more biggest and highest attention to evolution. We were speaking about evolution. I met some weeks ago someone, a winery, where she made the effort to reduce all the impact of bottling wine. So reduce the weight of a bottle, use not paper but special materials to print the label, use only colors that are natural colors to print the label, change the size of the cork to make it using less, try to put out the metal around the top of the bottles and find une cire,
Wax.
a wax. But try to find one which is, they made really such a big effort to reduce the impact of bottling wine. And there are a lot of these special experience and examples that you can find in Bordeaux. It could be, so we will make them, we will try to make them more known during the next Bordeaux Wine Festival in June. So I invite you all to visit it and to see all what we will do to explain this evolution of the Bordeaux wines.